We talked about the default constructor and the default destructor that are provided to you by C++ if you don't write your own. But those constructors and destructors don't do anything. I reinstated my own default constructor and my 2-parameter constructor and the destructor so we can use the user-defined methods. So here's our example again. I updated the second temperature to be 100 so that we can get some different values. We can see the 0, 100, and -17 converts to 32, 212, and 0 degrees Fahrenheit. And now what I want to look at is the copy constructor and the assignment operator. The copy constructor is used to create a copy of an object. So if I want to create a new temperature and I want to create temperature D, I can create that temperature by making a copy of a different temperature, for example, temperature A. So I'm passing in something of the same type, this is of temperature type, to create a temperature object. And what's going to happen is it's going to copy every member value from temperature A to temperature D. Well, what are our member values? Our member values, well, we just have one for the temperature class. We have this double Celsius value. So it's going to copy the Celsius value from temperature A and store it into temperature D. So if I write out temperature D, it should be the same as temperature A. So here we see temperature A and temperature D are the same. It's constructing or creating an instance of a temperature by copying the member values of a temperature that we passed in, and that's called a copy constructor. C++ provides this copy constructor to you by default. We also can do assignment. Let's say I want to set temperature B to the value of temperature C. So I'm going to set the value of temperature B to whatever was in temperature C. That's going to do the same thing, a member-wise copy of everything, and everything in this case is this one member variable, Celsius value. It's going to copy that Celsius value from C into B. So in this case, B and C should have the same values, and that's going to be the 0 Fahrenheit. So now when I run it again, you can see that A is the default of 32. B, even though it was constructed with 100, because we assigned it the value from C, now B and C are both 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and temperature D was created from A, so A and D also match. Notice we didn't write any code for that to happen. C++ provided us that assignment operator to do those copies. We actually can implement our own copy constructor and assignment. For our copy constructor, what we're going to do is create a temperature object by passing in a temperature object, and we don't need an extra copy of the temperature object because we're going to make a copy of that temperature object inside the constructor, so we're going to pass that by reference so we don't get an extra copy. And we also want to make sure that since we're passing it in by reference, that doesn't change. So we're going to pass in by reference our temperature T in order to copy T into a new temperature object. So we're going to go ahead and create the definition for this in the CPP file. And so Visual Studio opens up that window for me. And what we want to do is we want to copy into our Celsius value of our T that we passed in. So T is our parameter. It's of type temperature, and it has also a private data member value of Celsius. Now here we're assigning Celsius value to Celsius value. That gets a little confusing. So to help clarify, we can put in this Celsius value to make sure we know that the one that we're constructing is the one that we're going to set with a copy of the data from our temperature. And this is the default copy constructor that C++ will provide for us. We just wrote it ourselves this time. And so let's write a little message to say that we're in this. Remember, that was just a little window into our our CPP file. So if we look in our CPP file, well, here it is. We can find that copy constructor that was created. And this is the call that's going to do the copy constructor. So if we just run it, you can see that we went into the copy constructor when we did this construction based on passing in a temperature. We can also write our own assignment operator. So let's try writing our own assignment operator. We start by declaring it in our header. And assignment needs to return a temperature object. There's a special format to writing the operators, and you use the word operator and then the symbol. So the symbol for assignment is an equal sign. So if we say operator equal, then we can pass in the parameter, which would be the temperature that we want to store during the assignment. Just like the copy constructor, we don't want to be able to change that temperature. And so we'll pass it by a constant reference to assign the values from our T temperature into the temperature that is being assigned into. So let's create the definition. So this object, we want to do a member-wise copy of this Celsius value and assign this Celsius value to the one that was passed in through our T. So our parameter named T, we're going to get the Celsius value from that parameter and assign it to this temperature that we're working on right now. And what we want to return is also this temperature that we're working on right now. So this is a pointer, so in order to return a temperature, we have to dereference this to return it. Now let's add a little statement in there so that we know that we actually entered into this method that we are writing. Because we know the operator is provided by C++, so if we didn't write it correctly, it won't be calling it. So let's just put a little message that we're in the assignment operator. In main, what we expect is we're going to have the default constructor, then the constructor that takes the two parameters because the second one is defaulted here, then the constructor that takes the two parameters and we're passing in both. Then we should have the copy constructor called, and then we should have the assignment. And so here we are. We have the default constructor called, our constructor with the two parameters, twice for these two. Then we had our copy constructor call here. And then we got into the assignment operator. And that's where we did the assignment of the values. Well, and then how did we get into the copy constructor again? Well, let's step through the code and see what's happening. Right here on line 21, we're in the assignment, and let's see how we're ending up with the copy constructor. So our debugger stopped right here on line 21, and if we step in, we know we should step in to our assignment operator code. Here we are at our assignment operator code. If we step in, we're going to assign our parameters Celsius value into this temperature object Celsius value. We wrote out the little message that we were going to do an assignment here, and then we're returning this temperature. And what's happening when I'm returning this temperature? Well, it's going to make a copy of this. It went into the copy constructor in order to make a copy of this to return as a temperature. And then if we step in again, when we go out of scope, it's going to actually destruct that temporary temperature that was used for creating that copy. Now, that seems rather inefficient to be making this copy, then that gets immediately destructed. So instead of returning a copy of the temperature, we can make a return by reference, and then we will skip that step of copying and destructing that object and just return a reference to this instead of a copy. Oh, and we have to change that if we change that in our CPP file, we also have to change that in our header file. And so then let's go ahead and try to run it. And now you can see we've gotten rid of that extra copy in our assignment by returning the temperature as a reference instead of a temperature object instance itself.